Welcome, Jeff. Good to see you. Good to chat and catch up briefly.
Good to see you, Lloyd.
It's wonderful to just hear a little bit about your story and just to really, chat through your life experiences and some of the things you've learned, some of the things you do differently. Just looking back over the last few decades of being involved in church, being involved in business, all the decisions you've made, the times that have been tough, and everything in between. So I'd love just to, just to kick us off, just briefly, at a very high level, who's Jeff Warin? Who are you? Where are you? Yeah.
That's a good one. Ask my wife. No, who's Jeff Warin? Well, I'm a recently semi-retired chartered accountant. Sold the last of our businesses 18 months ago, and now just work on a consultancy basis. Really try to release time, that most precious resource. Really try to release time to work across churches, church plants, and get involved in all sorts of other things other than earning money for change that God was calling me to. So that's where I am, living in Suffolk, and also have a French base out in just near Geneva, out on Lake Geneva.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
okay, that's great. And just going back maybe a few decades, just help us just explore a little bit about your life and what you've done in business, your time as an accountant. And maybe just right back to the beginning, where you first felt an inkling to go into church planting, to be involved in church ministry, but at the same time being involved in business, leading a business, starting a business. So maybe that's the 1990s. I don't know, you correct me, but just take us back to then and just show us how you got involved in the beginning, what happened in your heart, what did God say to you? And just explore that a little bit.
Sure. I think, Lloyd, that there's something in the wiring, in the DNA, in a way that would go back even before me as an adult. There's something there that God created that was a little bit of a risk taker, that was always looking for something new, a little bit of pioneer there, always adventuring. And so that followed me into working life. And there I found myself training to be a chartered accountant. Against my better judgment, I wanted to be an actor. But that's and met a fantastic young lady called Jane, who I married, and we set up in Hertfordshire, home there, and joined the local church, and training in a big firm. I never saw myself as a cog in a big firm of accountants. That wasn't how God had designed me. So pretty soon was getting bored with that and moved on into a bigger business, but knew eventually that I would set up on my own. It was just something I knew. But that was it. I met a guy through church who was a chartered accountant also, and he was saying, "Come on, Jeff, let's do this. Let's do it together. Let's start something." And eventually, I moved out of my really cozy office, working for a fantastic Swedish company, and started off in a little office, the two of us just there praying. And God graciously brought clients to us, amazingly gracious at that time. And at that time, we were part of a small church in Harlow, which was really pushing forward with things of the Holy Spirit in those days, in those mid 1980s and early into the early 90s, and just got involved in the leadership and the worship there. And it was an interesting time trying to juggle those things. It's hard to say, hard to pin a time down when I felt God called me to one thing or called me to another. But you know that you just know when you're at peace with things, and you feel that kind of breath and wind of the Holy Spirit on things as well as you're just moving along. So that's where we started.
Okay, so you've been involved in leadership in a church, but also starting a business. And that started to go well. You felt a sense of peace, a sense of enjoyment, and felt the wind of God behind you. Take us to about maybe the late 90s. That's obviously been, you've been running a business, you've been involved in church planting, church leadership for a while. Just take us maybe to the end of the 90s. just walk us through what happened, maybe a difficult patch that you referred to, and just help us explore that a little bit.
Yeah. So yes, business was growing really well. We were becoming a big hitter. We were employing a lot of staff. We purchased a large building, and things were going well. Church was growing, and what I was aware of was we were over trading in the business and starting to run out of cash. We'd acquired another couple of other businesses, a computer business. We were building computers in our building, crazy in those days, and putting in networks, all sorts of new fancy things. And church was growing as well. I found myself running around like a mad person, relying on my own energy and strength, absolutely like a mad person. That was one thing I note now as I look at some younger people running around all over the place. I can see myself in them now. And one piece of advice I would give myself back those days would be, whatever you do, prioritize your time with God. Absolutely prioritize your time with God. If you are getting up and charging out the door at 6 o'clock and not getting back in till 8, and then logging back on, and then Sunday is just a blaze of activity, then you've got to stop, because otherwise the merry-go-round will chuck you off. Basically, it will absolutely chuck you off. It will end in tears. I'm telling you, it will end in tears. Something will give. For me, church gave, and we had a difficult time with the leadership in church. But in business, that continued until one day the bank refused to give us more credit. We were growing and growing, and anybody that knows it has a growing business will know that you need to finance that. The bank decided that was enough. We were getting exposed. That was a problem, because one of the pressures of having a business is you are responsible for paying people's salaries. And suddenly I had all of these people that I was thinking, we aren't going to be able to pay them at the end of the month. That was tough. That was really tough. That's when I realized that I had to go out for long walks and call on God and just try and get some order into this mess, this money-making machine, or money-losing machine at that time thing, this machine that we had. And that was interesting. I could go on to that, but I noticed you want just to prompt and ask a question.
Yeah, I'll just be interested just to know, just so you started off with a partner in business.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, just maybe at this stage, have you still got the same partner? As the structure of your business changed because it's grown? And, you know, in terms of, if you can share anything in terms of your church leadership situation, how that, what unfolded there. You obviously decided at some point to step back. And just maybe how friends and church and being accountable to people at that time, maybe, I don't know, helped or served or didn't serve you. Just maybe explore a little bit of that, and, dealing with other people, being in a team, how that helped you get from this, what you call a cliff edge, where you just suddenly realized, I need God to intervene, I need God to break through. Just walk us through what happened next and the team dynamics.
There's two or three things. Firstly, with church, I did things absolutely wrongly there. I was in leadership, and I said to the guys, that's it, guys, we need to be out of here. And I'm giving you notice, very short notice. We need to be out of here. That didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. And it finished up in a great big row, as often happens with teams. I'm really pleased to say that a year later, we had fantastic getting back together and putting our arms around each other, and all is well, and we're great friends now. But it meant we left the church, which is absolutely it was just the wrong thing at the wrong time. But, we handled that badly, and I recognize that now. And that came out of really me not being fully engaged with the church team about where I was in my business. I saw them as two different activities. So the church thing, I did the church thing, and I did the business thing. If the church guys knew what was going on in the business, actually, we wouldn't have hit that brick wall. well, I wouldn't. It wouldn't have been a shock to them, and me saying, "Hey guys, I just need to get out of here." You know, they would have walked along with me, and that was key. And I've tried to bring that much more into my life since then. Really tried to involve and get people to walk alongside me in business, because they have a different perspective. They pray for me, and the pressures are great in business, and it's good to have people to walk alongside. So there was that. We had another friend in another church that we moved to, and the leaders of that church were amazing people in Bishop Stortford. They were so full of grace and gave us a lot of time.
Fantastic.
And it was amazing. You know, God gave us breathing space, amazing breathing space, including financial breathing space. So bear in mind, we're talking back to the turn of the century, when somebody in the church said, "How much do you need, Jeff? How much cash do you need to bail you out of here?" And that was a significant sum. It was the best part of £50,000. He just said, "Have it, pay us back when you can." And
Wonderful.
That was amazing. Incredible provision of God, just to give us breathing space to rebuild and build our business really well. And I guess the year 2000 was when we started to look at the business as much more of a team dynamic rather than a pyramid dynamic, and really started to build things. So we went on a 5-day boot camp on business building, Graham and myself, my partner, and came back from that and really started to try and revolutionize the business. And but it was about, I think, God giving us breathing space, and that was a real answer to prayer there, and then allowing us time to build and putting some good people in our paths as we did that.
Fantastic. That's a wonderful journey that, you know, you've just described there. How in the midst of this trial, you reconnected with people, you started building strong teams. And I guess that's what saw you through. God just allowed you that space to almost realize that. And that was maybe, you know, behind the trial was, you know, draw people around you, both in business and in, you know, church. So just talking about teams and accountability, maybe just explore a little bit about that, how much you feel is good to share, you know, maybe with a church leadership team, with a, you know, business associate, with just a little bit about that, being accountable to someone, to a group of people, and taking risks with people. You mentioned that as well. You know, giving people a bit of freedom to run with things rather than, you know, keeping all the power to yourself, getting away from that pyramid structure, as you mentioned, and flattening it. Just explore a little bit of that with us.
Team is the most important thing. I think that if you can surround yourself with really great people, that, you know, that it's got to be the way forward, and then give them as much responsibility as they want, really. I'm very keen on systems. I like to systematize, because I think when you systematize things, a team can pick things up really well, and you can hand things on. So my catchphrase is, if you can systematize like 90% of the business, then you can humanize the front end, the really important front end, the customer facing stuff. So you really work hard on systems. When you do that, you can actually really free people up. And when I've freed people up, what I see is them blossom. And what my job is to create a supportive environment for those people. So actually, time and time again, I would be saying to clients, look, I am not the expert on this. I need to pull in a team member, because they are the expert on that.
Fantastic.
And you're constantly building your team up, saying, no, I'm not the expert, you're the expert. And just try not to create this kind of this mentality of I hold all the boss holds all the information or all the answers. Really important, that. And of course, that ripples out. Once you start to work on that culture, it ripples out, so that even our receptionist was in charge of reception. I had nothing to do with that. So she designed reception. She wasn't our receptionist anymore. She was our director of customer engagement.
Fantastic.
So we put in great coffee machines. We put in great, all of that type of thing, because she wanted to really care for them. And it worked right the way through the business. And then it ripples out from there. It ripples out because people are talking about, well, why do you do this? And then actually your service providers, you work with them relationally rather than transactionally. It ripples out. And it also it helps with the end game. It helps with your exit strategy, because if you've really built a well systematized business, then actually what you do is when you want to exit, you've got a business in a box that's not reliant on you. And that's really
fantastic.
Important. And that's, of course, what happened. Yeah.
All right, good. So there's a lot of releasing people into their callings, not just having, thinking about your calling, but raising up other people.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about having fun. What does that phrase mean to you in a business context, and maybe church as well?
Yeah, well, fun is, again, part of DNA is people say I carry burdens quite lightly. I'm just quite a happy character by nature, I suppose. That helps. But actually, I do believe that church and family and the workplace has got to be a place where people just want to be there. They absolutely want to be there. And fun is part of that. It's sometimes hard work, but fun is part of that. So certainly in business, we were always looking just to engage people in a fun way. Lots of games, lots of activity. I could go through some wacky things we did, absolutely wacky. But it's interesting. I contrast that to some of the large culture things I've seen, where what work has become is maybe they're trying to create work as being a bit like family. And so, they'll have beautiful lounges and coffees, and basically work. The workplace has become a place that is, maybe a substitute for family, and that type of thing. It wasn't that. We sent people home. People weren't allowed to work after 6 o'clock in my business. They certainly weren't. And I have actually disciplined people for working into the evenings, because to send people back. So we made it a good place to work, but it wasn't the be all and end all. We sent them home, and that was really important. And our clients knew that as well. That actually it was important for our team. Oh, we also made sure they took lunch hours as well. Bear in mind, this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
This wasn't now. This was, we were pushing barriers at that point. So, I mean, whatever, always finish with a smile and a joke. Always, it's really important. Even in the most serious of things, you'd always finish with a smile. Always.
That's fantastic. I love that last little those few comments you made. In terms of someone who's setting out now, who's pursuing both a church leadership role as well as leading in business, bivocational callings, and what would you caution them against or for? What did you draw them into? Just really briefly, some thoughts from the last 20-30 years of your walking, the speed bumps that you had, and the learning to say no to some things, and actually now's time to stop. Just really briefly, what would you really caution these guys against, and what would you really draw them into?
I think one thing is, be careful who you partner with.
Okay.
I certainly can see God's hand on the partnerships where I've partnered with Christians. My lowest point in business was when I was banging my fist on a boardroom table when I had partnered with somebody in the computer business who wasn't a Christian, and we finished up folding our business and making people redundant. And that was my lowest ever point. So be careful who you partner with. In terms of calling, you say about being sure about calling, and that's interesting. It's often other people are more sure of your calling than you. I think other people see it in you. So that's why it's important, I think, to have people around you and to be talking to them and checking with them. You know, is this right? Do you think I've got this right? You know, start off with the end in mind as well. That is really, really important. So don't just think, well, I'm going to set up a business, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Actually project yourself forward 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. How are you going to get out of that? How are you going to get out of that? Are you locking yourself into something? Always start off with the end in mind. That's really, really important. And I you know, and again, have people that would be accountable. You'd be accountable with. The other thing in terms of church is you know, there's a similar DNA. There's a similar DNA in church planting and planting a business. You know, they're similar things, and I think you have got to be careful that you don't spread yourself too thinly there. And I think that, you know, because people like me are people that would say, yes, I can do that. I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that, because we're built like that. I think you have to be really, really careful. You don't spread yourself too thin.
Learning to say no.
It is absolutely about learning to say no. Yeah. My wife would tell you that.
Yeah, and I guess part of this journey is you've learned to pull the plug on things that are not working and say no. I guess going back to back to the late 90s when things did, fall apart a little bit, there was the sense where there was this lack, this disconnect between, I guess, you as a business church leader and maybe the other leaders who are more non-commercial.
Yeah.
And I guess Business Link has been set up to bridge that gap. Can you just tell us a little bit about your passion to, see people not making that mistake, like what happened to you, and how you're, trying to, connect church and, business together?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, my dream would be for church leaders and business leaders to be having coffee and lunch together occasionally.
Fantastic.
To see church leaders on factory floors, in offices, praying in boardrooms. Similarly, my dream would be that the business leaders would spend some time in the church during the week, and you bring in their skills to the church during the week. Not just attending on a Sunday and saying, hey, all they want is my money, actually to have that cross-cultural thing. It goes without saying that the majority of working people in church congregations work in a workplace of some type. A significant number of those work in industry and commerce, so the importance of church leaders getting into those places you can't say more highly. Similarly, the other way as well. So
fantastic. Yeah. Just a last comment, just in terms of Apostolic Input. Just comment on that briefly in terms of all of that's happened, and maybe any helping hands along the way from an apostolic movement of churches like New Frontiers that may have helped you along the way or did help you.
Certainly, New Frontiers has been on this journey. I've been on this journey as part of New Frontiers since the mid-1990s. It's been key, it's been instrumental. I think this is where I've learned to grow up in the gifts of the Holy Spirit and realize that they're not just for church meetings and Sundays. That actually they are more relevant probably in the workplace than anywhere in my just normal life. They're more relevant. People like Mike and Morris, really important in the more latterly years. But then I go back, people like Peter Vincent at Bishop Stortford, amazing church leader, really influential with me in those times. And actually, it's a really good place for a businessman who's really, really busy on a Sunday, once a week, just to go and lose themselves in worship with lots and lots of people there. Remember those days when we used to do that before COVID? Just to lose ourselves in worship with lots of people, and to hear God's word preached really well, and that's really important. That kind of centers you for the week. I find that's a really good centering point. And yeah, business is important, but actually church, family, and being part of that is really important. And the apostolic oversight over that is again really important. So yeah, the two go side by side. They don't really go side by side. They're together really, all as one. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Any last comments? Anything that maybe popped into your mind just as you've been thinking that I didn't cover with my questions? Anything you just want to leave at the door?
Yeah, I suppose I just want to come back and talk about team again.
Brilliant.
Team, releasing people, and is fundamental to growing a business and also to growing a church. And I'll say that phrase again. If you can systematize a huge part of what you do, then you can humanize a big part of the other part of what you do. And that really allows you to release people. So time and time again, I walk into churches, I walk into small businesses, and I see people reinventing the wheel and also not being quite sure what they're meant to do because maybe they're volunteers or something like that. And nobody's quite I think, well, that should be systematized. People should know what they're going to do. And that releases people. It's funny. Systems release people. It's a funny thing. People, it's counterintuitive, but they do release people, and in the right culture. So that's what I want to say in that. And also, it all should be fun. It really all should be fun. Yeah, it's
fantastic.
But if God's with you in it, then when you look back, you think, actually, yeah, that was good.
That's been amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff, for that really wonderful conversation. It's been a real blessing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.